It may be because I only finished reading it about a minute before starting to work on this video, but Sunrise on the Reaping is probably my favourite Hunger Games book. Good day everyone, it's Leo Chase from Mythmaster here with another book review, this time for the latest book in the Hunger Games series, Sunrise on the Reaping. Before I go into any spoilers, I will be having a non-spoiler section so you can listen to that, go read the book, and then come back and finish the video. It should all be timestamped. And please feel free to comment your opinions in the comments below, but mark them with a spoiler warning if necessary, because it's quite a new book. The first thing that I want to touch upon is how perfectly the book acts as both a sequel to The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and a prequel to the original Hunger Games trilogy. It brings in all sorts of characters from both that you wouldn't have considered that much to appear, but it makes sense that they're around, including, well, not the twist one, but one only kind of registered and only noticed the significance of at the end. Keep in mind that I read most of this late in the evenings because it was the only time I could find, and I was so engrossed in the story, that I kind of didn't think, oh, that might be that person. The book is reminiscent of the Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes, in how it uses music, and how certain songs are used, and some of them, when reading them, sent a literal shiver up my spine. Sunrise on the Reaping enhances so much of the original trilogy, but doesn't change or retcon much, which is good. If Suzanne Collins wrote another Hunger Games book, I'm not sure what she would use in a way, but I'm sure she could make it work, though it'd be nowhere near as good as this one. Before I move on to the spoilers, I'd like to ask you to consider subscribing, as I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers before I turn 18 in May. And yes, spoilers are now coming, so if you don't hear them, you should probably leave now. Gone? I'll give you a few more seconds. Good. One thing this book does, which I was not expecting, is that Haymitch is basically sent on a mission to break the arena. We knew the rebellion had always existed, with the existence of District 13, but the fact that it was active, or this active, over 20 years before the original plot surprised me. I was not expecting Plutarch to be in this book, or to be involved this heavily in the rebellion, but he is, and I think he was brilliantly carried over from the original series. And while we, the reader, knows he's nearly definitely on Haymitch's side due to his later involvement, Haymitch never really trusts him, in a similar vein to Katniss with, well, just about everyone. Other key members of the rebellion are Beatty, Wirus, and Mags, the former two being people I again was not expecting to see, but were very glad to. Beatty is probably the most important in the story, being the most actively involved in the rebellion, and having his son Amper being in the games as punishment for him. And speaking of punishment, we are given a slight origin to Wirus's later disorganized speech. This book truly makes me think that President Snow directly made sure that Beatty, Mags, and Wirus all got into the 50th Hunger Games, well, 75th Hunger Games, while Haymitch had to watch. A key theme of this book is propaganda, and how it's used throughout the story is incredible, with Haymitch and readers knowing everything that has happened, only to helplessly see it twisted and rewritten to tell the story that Snow and the Capitol want to tell. This is first displayed with Woodbine Chance's death and Haymitch's drafting, and later put on full show with Haymitch seeing what the audience saw and were made to remember, the Rascal's redemption arc, if you'll allow me. The death order being rewritten to the audience automatically made me think of how the order of Foxface's and Fresh's deaths are switched from book to film in the original Hunger Games. Now to talk of how Sunrise on the Reaping links to the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And the most obvious place to start, and, well, the main place, is with Lenore Dove, with how she is delightful to look at, swishes around in a bright coat, and sings like a mockingjay. When Snow says that, you can instantly hear the hatred in his voice for Lucy Gray, and anyone associated with her. But yes, Haymitch's love is Lenore Dove, one of the Covey, and her uncles are Tam Amber and Clark Carmine, who you'll probably recognise from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, as, well, members of the Covey. And the book Sunrise on Reaping is full of songs, including snippets of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, which is where Lenore gets her name from. The songs also include The Hanging Tree, Behold There Before, and The Ballad of Lucy Gray Baird, and various other ones from across the series. One of the songs is a variation of the Ladybug nursery rhyme, which will always just make me think of X-Men 97 and Mr. Sinister. And yes, I did hear it in his voice, just as I heard many of the songs in Lucy Gray Baird's voice. Plus, we see that Lucy Gray is already all but forgotten, with all that remains being some vague memories, the memories that the Covey and Snow have of her, admittedly very different memories, and the gravestone in the woods, which means that Snow probably did kill her in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Haymitch also sees a clip of Lucy Gray and Snow at one of her interviews. I've mentioned Plutarch, Beatty and the rest, but there are a few other surprise additions, the first of which being Effie Trinket, who shows up as a backup stylist for Magno, not Mango, and also takes over Drusilla's job at parts. This section will kind of be focused on how this links to the later books, well, original books. We knew that Haymitch and Effie knew each other, because of all the time Haymitch had been a mentor and Effie an escort, but I don't ever think that the fact that their histories were this entwined, with Effie playing a major role and essentially being Haymitch's stylist, while also accompanying him post-games, was ever hinted at in the original series, but it's a nice touch. Also, the lady with the cat ears could be Tigress, but I don't think it is. I just think that, like, as I think they say in Mockingjay, cat ears and stuff were a big fashion thing, and that's when Tigress got, like, her whiskers and stuff. The biggest surprise, however, was Katniss's father, Burdock, and her mother, Astrid. When we were introduced to Burdock and found out that he was an Everdeen, I was like, oh, that's cool, especially when he had a bow and went hunting in the woods. And outside of maybe my subconscious, it didn't click in my mind that he was Katniss's father. With the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes being set so far before the original series, I wasn't expecting characters who we knew to show up in Sunrise on the Reaping, even though we knew Haymitch was the main character, and especially that we knew that Maisley Donna was Katniss's mum's best friend. Before reading it, I was like, oh, we're going to see Katniss's mum, but then I completely forgot about that until basically the end. And the kind of key moments which should have alerted me to it were, well, a scene boy never got together with a town girl. I noticed that, I was like, oh, like Katniss's parents, but didn't realise I was literally talking about them. And Astrid applied ointments and was good at things like that, until basically right at the end when she gave the sleeping syrup to Haymitch, and that's when I realised, oh, and yeah. And that was in Vix's village, so literally just before the epilogue. Then I mentally facepalmed myself. But it does put a new spin on every interaction Haymitch has with Katniss, as I don't think we ever knew he was best friends with her dad. The clock in the third quarterquell may be my favourite. The simple woods and fields of the 74th Hunger Games are iconic, and the 10th Hunger Games arena is, in chronological order, the original, but the deceptive poison of this sweet arena perfectly aligns with the theme of propaganda and, well, of poison throughout the entire book. Plus, we learn about Wirus's arena, which sounds mentally torturous. In Sunrise on the Reaping, we also learn about the inner workings of the arena via BT, with us finding out how Mutts are sent out, and how there's an entire sub-level beneath the arena, which I think was expected and kind of like, I just thought there was, but it's nice to have some confirmation. The second quarterquell also has the most Mutts, and while they don't carry the torture of the tribute-eyed dogs or the jabberjays, they do have the beauty of Dr. Ghoul's snakes, and the frosty of, well, all of them us. If I remember correctly, we have the electric butterflies and rainbow bats for Haymitch, the squirrels for Amper, the blood-sucking ladybugs in the maze, and the deadly birds for Maisley, plus the massive porcupine bear, or porcu-bear, as I like to call it. And as for major events, and by that I mean those planned by the capital, there's the volcano, which is certainly a deadly spectacle. In Sunrise on the Reaping, there are twice as many tributes with a few extras added in to some extent. The most significant are Haymitch, Luella, Maisley, Wyatt, Silka, Panache, Pana. I think I'm going to go with Panache, Amper, and Lulu. Haymitch is obviously the main character, who we knew would win, but it was still fantastic seeing how everything happened. Luella seemed like she was going to be a great character, only to die before the games even began, and be replaced by the brainwashed, snake-wearing Lulu, who you can't really help but feel pity for, while also kind of feeling uneasy about. Maisley is probably my second favourite new character, with new being in air quotes because we already knew of her, but her death is probably the one which made me saddest, with the other contender being Lenore, which is good, as those are the ones you're probably supposed to feel worse about. She probably had some of the best character progression, and I think had the best relationship with Haymitch, not in terms of love or anything, but as a sister, as they say. Wyatt is there. He gives odds, but overall isn't as significant as the others, but it would be interesting to see how he would have given the odds as the game progressed. When I heard about the Newcomers Alliance, I thought it meant we'd see Haymitch in a really big group for the games, but instead he went off on his own and had a few different partners over the course of the games, in a similar vein to Katniss in the 74th Hunger Games. I really liked Amper, partly because he was clever, and I love clever characters, and the son of one of my favourite characters, being Beatty, but also I think he was really well written with him being only 12, but seeming so much mature than that. I think he and his father knew he wouldn't make it out, and I'm pretty sure they stated this, but that didn't stop them from making the best use of his time in the arena. Then there's Panache and Silka. I guess Silka would be the girl who came in second, and was killed by the rebounding axe, though while it was painted to look like Haymitch was being clever in the original series, from his point of view it came off more as a happy accident, but he kind of realised it as it was happening. I thought Panache would last longer given his introduction and setup, but he served his purpose well enough. We knew the book wouldn't end well for Sid, Mar, or Lenore, and while Mar's and Sid's death were pretty sad, it didn't really hit me as much as Amper's, Maisley's, or Lenore's, the latter of which was horrifying, as Haymitch, who had been avoiding poison, Snow's weapon of choice, for the past few weeks, ends up feeding his girlfriend the exact thing that ends her life. It's the moment when she mentions how she can now eat the one Sid gave her that just throws everything into chaos, in the mind of the reader and also in the mind of Haymitch, but by then it's too late. At least she got to say her goodbyes to Haymitch, and the all-fire stuff was very good. The book ends with Haymitch being put on the path that leads him straight to the 74th Hunger Games. The epilogue is amazing. We see why Katniss and Peter were the ones to finally bring Haymitch out of his stupor, and how he never stopped loving Lenore, who, unlike Lucy Gray and Snow, haunts him in the best way, as an angel, not a ghost. And Katniss bringing the goose eggs and the simple sentences she says to Haymitch seem to perfectly encapsulate the relationship between the two of them, despite Suzanne Collins not having written it for 15 years. With the movie coming next year, I wonder if they'll get Jennifer Lawrence and Woody Harrelson back for the epilogue, given that they're around the ages that the characters would be, though in the films, Haymitch is nearly a decade older than he is in the books, which is why I think it's hard to think of Effie being older than him. The Hunger Games is one of my favourite book series, and is one where I can enjoy both the films and the books with regular ease, though not as regularly as most of the Rick Riordan series and the Gone and Stag series, but those are all in terms of books. I think this is one of the only books I've properly sunk into in a long time, and I would give it at least a 9 out of 10, though that may decrease to an 10 maybe, though it might decrease to an 8 or 9, if after waiting a while, and when I haven't read it for a while. Hence why I'm writing this review only a couple of hours after finishing it, and recording it a day later, it's still my favourite. Some videos I'm currently working on include giving my superhero team the Phoenix Champions Pokemon, and pitting Hawkeye up against every MCU villain. Have a good day, and ta-ta.